Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, my fellow YouTubers, Facebookians. It's been a while since I did a video. Last video was, I believe, my anniversary video. So, how goes it? Now, today I want to talk to you about tablets. That's right. A lot of people say, oh, well, what's the difference between iPad, Android, and Windows? Is there a Windows? I'm going to break it down to you. I've done hours and hours and hours of research for you all out there so you guys can get the best tablet for the money. I put together a spreadsheet here, and the spreadsheet is simple. First it says which one. We're going to break it down by brand. First of all, let's just say Samsung. Now, to me, I find Samsung to be a piece of junk, but I could have got a lemon. A lot of people are saying Samsung is number one. So, Samsung, let's go break down. Galaxy 1, I had it. It's a big hunk of junk. Battery won't hold a charge. You can still do things with it. Slow as slow can be when you load it up. It wants to boot so many things. It only had 256 megs of RAM, I believe, or 512. Now, let me break it down. Linux is like a byproduct of the Android operating system. You can make programs for it, no problem, if you know what you're doing. Now, let's get down to brass tack. The Samsung Galaxy 1 7-inch was a big hunk of junk, in my opinion, for wireless. The Samsung Galaxy 1 tablet that was 10.1 has gotten good reviews. It had 16 gigs, 32, and 64. All of them all have 1 gig of RAM. The processor runs, I believe the Galaxy 10.1 was a Tegra 2 processor. Yeah, Tegra 2. You can find them still on the market in places. It depends on what size hard disk drive. Tegra 2, not bad. It's got a front and back camera. Again, you got to ask yourself, what is your purpose for the tablet? Is it Skype? Is it texting? Is it documents? Alright, now the 10.1 runs on Honeycomb. That's the 3.0 to 3.2 OS. Now, if you want to go smaller, you can get the 8.9 inch Samsung Galaxy. Same configuration, everything. I don't know if it runs the same processor. That I can't tell you. I can't tell you it's the same spec, 16, 32, 64, with approximately 1 gig of RAM. Prices vary. It also has a 2 megapixel front camera and a 3.0 megapixel back camera for taking pictures. Now, the Samsung Galaxy 2 runs a TI processor by Texas Instrument. It still runs Honeycomb or Ice Cream Sandwich. I think it's Ice Cream Sandwich it runs, I think. It's got a 0.03 megapixel camera in the front and a 3.0 in the back. And it's, in my opinion, I haven't played with the Ice Cream Sandwich operating system, so I don't know. But, again, you can get 16, 32, or 64. Price isn't bad either if you know what you're doing on that aspect. Now, for Motorola, there's 3 models. You get the Zoom one, which is 32 gigs. You get 1 gig of RAM. You get a dual-core Tegra 2 processor, and you get Honeycomb, which can be upgraded to Ice Cream Sandwich. It runs, let's see here. I got a spreadsheet open so it can help me. There we go. It runs Honeycomb operating system upgraded to Ice Cream Sandwich. And it's fairly affordable. It's got a 2.0 megapixel front camera and a 5.0. Again, it depends on what you want to use. Right? Depends. You want Word docs, you're going to have to get a Word doc program, etc. If you want PDFs, well, it's all there. The Motorola Zyborg is an 8.2 with 16, 32, or 64 configuration. All 1 gig of RAM. All tablets have 1 gig now. With dual core processor. The other thing is it runs Ice Cream Sandwich. all the tablets I've talked so far does not have a removable battery. Other points of interest is it runs a 1.3 megapixel front camera for Skype, which is like VGA, 5.0 megapixel rear. Price is okay if you're interested in an 8.2 tablet. A little bigger than a 7.7 or a 7 Plus Samsung. Next one's the Motorola Zyborg 10.1. Same spec, 16, 32, 64. You only get, from what I understand, 1 gig of RAM, ice cream sandwich, and it's the same specs as the other ones. 1.3 megapixel camera. Some of them have micro USB ports and stuff, so you can actually do it. But I'll get to the next one. Sony Tab. Sony Tab's good. You get 16 or 32 gigs of space. Not a lot, but you know. 1 gig of RAM, dual core, running Honeycomb. It's got a 0.3 megapixel camera and a 5.0 megapixel rear camera. Price is not bad, but mostly it is for the, you know, it's PlayStation certified, so when PlayStation Store brings out some games, you can buy it. Me, I'm not trying out Sony because they don't have the games I want. Next up is the Acer Iconia A500. Older model, you can still find them. It runs 16 gigs, 32, and I believe 64. 1 gig of RAM, it's got a dual core. It's running Honeycomb, and it's got a front-facing camera for Skype. No back camera for taking pictures, from what I understand. And it's pretty expensive. Now, the new Acer Iconia A200 10.1 inch screen. Again, the A500 is the same. It's got 16, 32, or 64. I believe it's the one I've checked out is 16 gigs. Runs ice cream sandwich on a dual core processor. It's got a front 2.0 megapixel camera, and it's pretty affordable. Now, the IdeaPad. The IdeaPad isn't bad. It's 16, 32, or 64, I believe, with 1 gig of RAM, dual core with ice cream sandwich, running a 2.0 megapixel camera front and 5.0 megapixel camera back. What it means is you got to know what you want with it. Do you want to use it as an MP3 player, or do you want to use your tablet for Word docs, etc., or browsing the net? It's big configurations. Lenovo pads, 32 gigs is what I found. A 1 gig of RAM, dual core with ice cream sandwich, has a 1.3 megapixel camera and 1.3 megapixel camera in the front, no in the back, so you can't take it. It's mostly for Word people. Toshiba Thrive 10.1 inch. It comes in 8 gig, 16 gig, or 32 gig, from what I understand. 1 gig of RAM, Honeycomb. It has a removable battery. 2.0 megapixel front camera, and good for Skypes, and 5.0 megapixel for back for just taking hobby shots around town or whatever. Toshiba Excite. This one is kind of unique. I'll get into it in a minute. You want to understand it's a 7-inch Toshiba Strike, 10-inch, and a 13-inch screen. Varying in price from 16, 32, or 64. It all runs 1 gig of RAM because, well, from what I understand from the OS, it is Linux based, so it doesn't need a lot of RAM. Runs ice cream sandwich. It also has a 2.0 megapixel back camera and a 5.0 megapixel front. The Excite does not have a removable battery, so if something happens, you must take it to get it repaired. The next one up is the BlackBerry Playbook. You get 1 gig of RAM, 16, 32, or 64. Prices are very good. It runs a Cortex A8 processor, I believe it is. Playbook OS 2.0. And it runs very affordable. It's got a VGA front and a 3.0 megapixel back. Basically, again, for hobby shots, etc. The next one is the Asus Transformer Prime. Now, they have a 32 gig model. I believe that's the only one you get. You get a Tegra 3 processor. That's right, 3 processor. Ice cream sandwich. It's got a 1.2 megapixel front camera for Skype and an 8.0 megapixel camera for back. And it's designed for the consumer that takes it, throws it in their bag, and goes. Meaning it's got Gorilla Glass. That's what the Excite has. The Excite and the Asus Prime, Asus Transformer Prime has is the Gorilla Glass front, so it's a lot stronger. So, what does that leave us? Well, it leaves you with one, the 8.9-inch LG tablet, which runs. It's got a 2.0 megapixel front camera, no rear camera. I believe it's running a Tegra 2 processor, and you get one setting. I think it's like 32 or 64 on the RAM. Now, what does that say about things? Well, it gets into the other part. Apple. Apple, you gotta download and buy programs for certain things like opening documents, etc. Now, for me, Apple ain't bad. I use my tablet for many things. Facebook, well, I gave that up because, well, Facebook is boring me. I'm having enough trouble as is with Facebook, and I do not want any more trouble. I use my computer for video chat or spreadsheets at the moment. Now, people said, oh, well, if the what about that deceased tablet, the HP touchpad? The touchpad is a unique tablet. Here's the touchpad, 32 gig configuration. What it is it's really good, and I'll explain why it's good. One, you can put in your multiple things under Messenger. I use this as a Messenger tablet. Do talk to my my special sweetie, Annie. I love her very much. I just hope she stops ignoring me. Told her I'd get to this video, so yeah, Annie is my sweetheart, my baby, my pride and joy. I love Annie. But this isn't about Annie. I just figured, you know, Annie wants to know more about tablets. Well, I'm doing this also for her and for you people that's wondering. It has to do with the operating system. Now, let's get down to it. You can do BlackBerry, which is just like the HP. It's got the little cards, you know, you can scroll through them. The other tablets, you can take the tablets and you can put as many icons like in a Droid and just keep scrolling, download a lot of free programs. It depends on what usage you want. Like I said, my best buddy would agree on that one. It just depends on what you want to use it with. Now, someone says, oh, well, let's get to Windows. All right. The Windows tablet is kind of tricky. Okay, let's go down the list. First, we have the Acer. It's got a 10.1-inch screen with 32 gigs of RAM. This is a SSD. All the hard drives are SSD except for one. I'll explain why. It's got 2 gigs of RAM, so you're running Windows 32 or 64 Home Premium or Professional. However, it's running a dual-core processor for the Iconia. It's running Windows 7. It has no front or back cameras that I can understand. You can get a docking station and a keyboard fairly cheap for it. Basically what it does is it does everything your full laptop does. You can take it with you. You can slide it into a bag. You can take it and use your email. You can use Skype. You can use Yahoo. You can use Word, Excel, everything. It comes with Excel and it comes with Word Starter, from what I understand. And it also has the ATI graphics chip in it, so you can play, say, Diablo 2 if you docked up properly, or older games if you know how to configure them properly. Yeah, so that is your Acer Iconia W500. Now you're wondering about the HP Slate. Slate 1 runs, well, it's hard to get a hold of. You can get them on eBay. Brand new still. 64 gigs. It comes with 2 gigs of RAM. It's running an Atom Z processor. It's got a USB plug in the top, so you are, yeah, top or bottom, whichever way you prefer your tablet. It does that, and it runs Windows 32 Professional. That's why it's got 2 gigs of RAM. You can, you know, comes with MS Office Starter, I think, and you just use it. It's got a pen, so you can, the digitizer, so you can write notes, etc. It runs with an 8.9-inch screen. It's got an Intel's Media 600 chip, so you can't do like gaming on it, so I don't call it a gaming tablet, but they'll make them eventually. Now the HP Slate 2 comes in two configurations. It comes with a 32 or 64 gig again, but it also comes with the configuration of Windows 7 Home Premium, I believe, or 32 or Professional. You do get your cameras in both of them, which are both basically VGA front-facing cameras and 3.0 megapixel back cameras. So it's basically a hobby thing if you just want to take it around town and then load it up on or go home and load it up and send pictures out. Yes. Runs Windows 7, you get Office Starter, and price isn't bad, but it isn't great. I'm going to do another video after this explaining something about Windows tablets on another scale. WinPad. The WinPad is a little different. It's got a graphics chip too, the ATI. It's got an AMD Z processor, dual core. It's got 4 gigs of RAM, and it's running a 1.3 megapixel front camera and a 1.3 megapixel back camera. So you don't get good quality shots, but for a gaming rig you can do it properly. That's right. And you get 32 gigs of space SSD. Final one is the Gigabyte S 1080. This baby has got 2 gigs of RAM, runs Windows 7. Problem is it does not have an SSD. It's actually got a turning speed hard drive that's 320 gigs. They decided to raise the price, and they figure people will be more gentle with it like a laptop. So you'll have to have a custom case put into it so you can take it with you so it doesn't shuffle a lot. None of these have Gorilla Glass, I believe, except for the HP Slate 2 on Windows. It runs with 2 gigs of RAM, and it's got an AMD dual core, 1.3 megapixel front. Bottom line is, it depends on what you want. If you want a full Office suite, you can go with the Windows. If you don't care for Office, or, you know, etc. Oh, but someone said, what about the Wi-Fi? It's got Wi-Fi built in on all of them. So, you know, all tablets have it. They don't have, I believe, an Ethernet port, you know. So, that said, you have to weigh the pros and cons. Look for my next video that talks about more about tablets versus netbooks. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching.